Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today's episode, we're going to take a look at this Sears Craftsman Contractor Series 20-inch scroll saw. My father had this for years and years. It all of a sudden, the speed controller stopped working. And every time you would turn it on, it would just go to 100% power. The blade would snap off and it would just go out of control. There was no speed control. You could move the pot, wouldn't do anything, it was just pretty much unusable because it would just destroy the blades and go full speed. You couldn't vary it. So I started doing a little research on it. I couldn't find any parts for it. Parts were discontinued. When they were available, this little control board here was pretty expensive, like $100 and something. No way it would be justified for this thing. I mean, you could buy these things now for, this is a heavy duty one, but you can get a pretty good price on them to make it hard to justify spending hundreds of dollars on a board if you can even find it. So I started doing a little digging to figure out what made it tick. And turns out the motor is a DC motor. It has an RPM meter, so it can monitor its own speed. So I started doing some research to try to find another speed controller. I initially thought it was an AC motor, so I bought this little AC speed controller and played around with that a little bit, and then I realized that it was DC, so that wasn't going to help. So I started doing a little more research. I figured out, so I put this on a meter. I'll actually do this for you right now. This potentiometer here, this is what varies, or supposed to vary the speed, but it doesn't work. I did measure the potentiometer. It's fine. It's doing what it's supposed to do. The switch works, so that's all fine. But so I've got my meter hooked up to the motor output, which is DC voltage. So when you turn it on, it goes right to, if you can see that, 104 volts DC. And the speed controller doesn't do anything. Doesn't change it at all. So I got on Amazon, I looked around a little bit, and I found this DC speed controller that takes 120 volts in, and it gives basically a 0 to 90 volt. This is what the spec is anyway. 0 to 90 volt DC output. This is called the DC51. I'll find the link for it, put it on the description below. But so now we can test this thing out. Let me turn off this, unplug this board, and put my meter on this motor so we can watch it. My lead will stay on. Put them on there. Alright, now I'm plug in my new speed controller. So I've got this new one. It's wired to 110 volts, plugged into my outlet over here. I got the motor hooked to that. I'm not hooking at the RPMs at all. It doesn't really matter. But I have my my voltmeter connected to the motor output. These will stay on. So let's go ahead and switch this on. I'll turn it down. Power that on. And I'll slowly turn it up. I think it takes it a minute for it to charge. There it goes. I got the polarity backwards, but you see on my meter, now I'm at 13 volts DC. Motor's running. There's 24 volts, 30 volts, 32 volts. So anyway, you see there I can vary the DC voltage with this controller, and it's working. I'll turn it down, turn it up. So, and this little controller was not very expensive. I bought it a while ago, so I can't remember. Like I said, I'll put it in the description. But so the simple little controller will take care of it. I don't need to know the RPM. I mean, maybe if I wanted to put a little RPM display on it, I could do that, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, just for fun. But this little guy will do the job. It'll go plenty fast enough. I don't want to crank it all the way up, but you know, I'm pretty sure it gets upwards close to that 90 volt spec that's on it. But so all I'm going to do is take this, mount it in the display panel, and get a working scroll saw again. Does have an internal fuse. So here's the motor, plus and minus. Polarity, I don't believe makes any difference in here. If it matters, I put the white one on the plus. I don't think it matters because it's going to just rotate the same direction either way. Wouldn't make any difference on the blade. And then of course your 110 volt in. I don't remember what the what this does. Probably some kind of a fault. Opens if it strips a breaker or something. I don't know. Doesn't matter for me. I don't need it. Awesome. Now we get to use it again. Get another 10, 15 years out of this thing.